This episode contains adult themes and is not appropriate for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, the world. This is They Will Kill, a true crime podcast. I'm going to do that again.
No, keep going. This is They Will Kill, a true crime podcast. It's hilarious. It's the funniest thing anyone's ever heard. Hey, that's Sadiac, and I'm Courtney. I'll take it from here. It's fine.
Thanks. Yeah, you should just do this one, apparently. We are sisters. We are your hosts.
Somebody's got tickled their funny bone earlier, apparently.
I know. I hear this case is really, really awful. So
oh my God,
we should get through the giggles now, so we're not.
Yeah, this might be the worst case we've ever covered. Heads up. Yeah, FYI.
Okay.
Lots of nervous, uncomfortable laughing from horror, maybe. So if anybody laughs during this episode, it's because we're deeply uncomfortable, not because we think it's funny, because it's really not funny.
I do feel like I've gotten my nervous giggling under control. The podcast has helped me realize that's something I do.
I would agree with you. Yep.
Yeah. So good. Thanks, everybody.
Well, I'm going to try to take it to the limit today.
All right.
So we'll see. This is the ultimate
happens.
test. Yes. This is the case of Charlie Chopoff.
I don't even like that at all. Like,
no.
Not for a second.
No, it's such a horror movie. I mean, the whole thing is such a horror movie, and it makes me wonder if horror movies weren't based on this. So you guys let me know after we're done. So when I first started to read about this case, I was honestly so shocked that very few other podcasts or shows or movies had covered it. And then I realized it was because there's almost no coverage of this case. It's one of those that every article is the same. All the information is super limited. But it's an extremely shocking and disturbing case. And so after some soul searching, I decided that it's one that we should cover. One of the problems, I think, with this case, these events occurred in the 70s, and all of the victims but one were young black boys. And the fourth victim was a young Puerto Rican boy.
Bummer.
Yeah. All the crimes took place near Harlem in New York City, which up until very recently was very, very poor and sort of, forgotten part of the city.
Right.
I've also read that the coverage of the case is often inconsistent and that facts aren't always correct. So I've done my best to pull from the most reputable sources. And again, I mean, this is just one of those stories that everybody should know. You say Charlie Chopoff and everyone's like, oh my God, that was the craziest case. So let's make that happen, guys. Let's get this case out there.
Yeah, it sort of seems like maybe the Atlanta Monster case has always been more well known, but I feel like just recently that one has become more popular to talk about. So
I would say the same thing. I mean, I don't think anybody had heard about that until like the podcast, and obviously Mindhunter covered it, thank God, which I still find very surprising because it's such a frustrating and inconclusive and horrible case. I'm really proud of them for covering that one. I think we talked about that before, but yeah, let's solve that fucking case and then this one.
Right.
So before we start, major, big time, hugest ever trigger warning we've ever issued. Serious violence against children, sexual assault. It's awful. So be forewarned. In March of 1972, 8-year-old Douglas Owens went missing after he left to run errands for his family. He was found very soon after on a rooftop just a couple of blocks from his home. He had been stabbed 28 times. His shoes were removed and placed near his body. There was inconclusive evidence of sexual assault, and his genitals were mostly removed.
Oh, God. 8 years old.
8, and the tiniest baby. On April 20th, 1972, an unnamed 10-year-old boy was, again, on his way to run an errand at a nearby shop when he met a, quote, olive-skinned stranger around his mid-30s who was thin, had bad skin, and a distinctive mole on his left cheek. The boy was extra intelligent for his age and was also able to pick up that the man was, quote, right-handed, walked with a limp, had foul breath, and stood approximately 5'7" tall.
Wow.
I know.
That's a lot of detail.
Yes, especially for a 10-year-old. Good boy.
Good job.
The man said his name was Michael and offered the boy 50 cents to follow him. The man then removed the boy's shoes, brutally raped and stabbed him, removed his genitals, and took them with him.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He then moved the boy from the roof of his building to an interior hallway where he was found soon after by a neighbor. Remarkably, the boy lived through the assault.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And while he was deeply traumatized by the encounter, he was able to give the police the description.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm happy he lived, and also sort of horrified that he lived through that.
I know.
I don't wish death on anyone, but my God.
I know. That's
what does that do to you? No, you can't.
It's probably the worst thing you can imagine living through, honestly.
No.
Yeah. I know. I tried to find more information about him and see if there's any follow-ups or anything. Of course, I mean, if I was him, I wouldn't want anybody to know anything about my life ever, but I couldn't find anything about him.
Well, good for him for not only surviving that, but for remembering so many details. And
yeah, no, incredible.
Wow.
Incredible. The victim's genitals were later recovered in a park by the police, who found a group of children playing with them.
My God. Stop it.
I know. It's not... the Band-Aid has been ripped off from this point on. It's kind of more the same, just a couple more times. But that's...
Okay.
Yes, that's the worst part by far. Almost exactly 6 months later, on October 23rd, 1972... a 9-year-old boy named Wendell Hubbard asked his father if he could buy a candy at a local shop, and his father gave him a quarter to do so. He left around 5:45 p.m., and at around 9:45 p.m., a group of children found his body on a roof. His shoes had been removed, he'd been sodomized, stabbed between 17 and 19 times, and castrated. A week after this murder, a small blurb was posted in a local paper, but it would be almost a year before any major coverage of the case would begin.
What the fuck?
So let's just imagine for a moment if 3 young white boys had been horribly assaulted in New York City. Like, they would shut the city, burn it down until they figured out who did this. So these 3 boys were assaulted, 2 of them murdered, all of them mutilated. Yep.
Yeah.
And they just, like, this local paper put a tiny blurb about it. And other than that, nothing. Yes. Almost a year to the day that Douglas Owens went missing, 9-year-old Luis Ortiz went to the store to purchase bread and milk for his mother around 8 p.m. It's been confirmed that he was able to complete his purchase, but when he didn't return home promptly, his mother immediately called the authorities, who searched overnight for the boy with no results. At around 1 p.m. the next day, a woman was taking her trash to the dumpster and found Luis's body in a basement stairwell of a building just a block away from the location where the boy who survived had been attacked. Wow. Once again, Luis had been sodomized, stabbed repeatedly, and castrated. This time, several neighbors reported seeing Luis with a stranger just before his disappearance, and police were able to pull together a description. A thin, olive-skinned man, around 5'7", in his mid-30s. The only difference this time was that no one reported a mole on his cheek, but did report, quote, black marks on his chin. Police also spoke to a neighbor who said a man had approached her 9-year-old son and offered him a free bike to help him with an errand. So the boy was terrified of his mother and said he'd have to get permission from her, and the next day the mother instead went to the location they'd agreed to meet, and she told the man to stay the hell away from her son or she'd call the police. These are one of those incredible. Yes, one of those situations where it's good to be an overprotective mother.
Shit, yeah.
Because I would be the kind of mother who would be like, it's fine, you know, these things don't happen. No, this mom saved her kid's life. She reported that the man was olive-skinned, likely Hispanic, and spoke with what she described as a Dominican accent. Police made a composite sketch of the man based on the mother's testimony, and the case finally started receiving media attention.
Good.
I know.
I'm surprised, too, with how brutal these crimes were, that there wasn't more, like, people didn't hear the boys, you know, or, like...
So many things. Well, I mean, yeah, and New York City is so loud, especially, you know, Harlem in the 70s. It's just a very raucous, crowded place, so... I don't know where he would have been able to pull off a crime like this, especially kind of in daytime. You know, these are like early evenings when these boys went missing. So I have no idea. But Yeah.
Yeah. I'm reeling over here a little bit.
It's the most horrifying. Quote, on March 10th, 4 days after his death, protesters staged a demonstration at the 24th Precinct on West 100th Street, angry that the NYPD had failed to devote more resources to finding the predator in their midst. Yeah. Yes. It's fucking insane.
Yeah.
Thanks to the protests, the NYPD finally assembled a task force dedicated to finding the predator killing young boys in their community. It's just why would it require protests at the precinct to assemble a task force? One Kyron Horman, for example, this one little boy goes missing, and it's all the whole entire world can talk about for months.
Right.
All these little boys go missing and mutilated, and the NYPD doesn't do a goddamn thing about it, except for look for them and then be like, well, there they are, moving on,
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's horrifying.
Yeah. The task force held meetings with the public. They distributed the sketch widely, and, quote, a local class even made a video warning other children to stay away from strangers. The task force interviewed over 150 suspects and even reached out to Interpol in case they could help uncover an international child molester who could have been involved, which sounds kind of crazy to me. I mean, I think they use that as an example of how the police did a lot of work, but I'm like...
So taking big leaps.
Yeah, what?
We don't, unless there's evidence, but...
Yeah, a Hispanic man in Harlem in the 70s in New York, I think he probably lives nearby.
Right. Yeah.
The precinct was inundated with calls, including a call from a woman in the Bronx who said that the sketch looked just like a man she knew named Erno Soto, who was chronically mentally ill and in treatment in an institution at the time of the call. Police visited Soto's wife, who explained that he was around 6'1", so it's much taller than the man described by witnesses. They also learned that he'd been locked up at the Ward Island's Manhattan Psychiatric Center at the time the surviving boy had been attacked, so they ruled him out as a suspect. Mm. As news of the case grew, and the killer was the topic of all conversation across the neighborhood, children started calling the predator among them Charlie Chopoff.
That's so creepy.
So creepy! In August of 1973, 7-year-old Stephen Cropper was hanging out in front of a public pool with his friend, asking people passing by for spare change. At one point, a slender Hispanic man with a limp approached the boys and chatted with them for a bit. Stephen was reported being seen with the same man around 3:30 p.m., but would never be seen alive again after that. At 5:30 p.m., a woman found Stephen's body on the roof of her building. His shoes were removed and placed near his body, and a large X had been carved in his chest, most likely post-mortem. He had an additional large gash down his arm, and the razor used to create the cuts was found under his body. Unlike the other cases, there was no evidence of molestation or mutilation this time. Despite the shift in the killer's MO, police concluded that Stephen must have been killed by the same perpetrator because the victims were also similar. Stephen's death didn't include stabbing, sodomy, or castration and occurred 100 blocks from the other attacks. An unnamed NYPD officer said, quote, the probability that the same man did all 4 crimes is fantastic, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Right. I mean, granted, this is when they were just starting to profile serial killers, but of course the same man did all 4 crimes.
Right.
Right? I mean, this one, the MO is different, but not enough that I would completely rule it out. I would just assume that he was, experimenting with new things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Not distracted, but...
Well, yes.
Yeah.
To your point, the other major commonality was that Stephen's shoes had also been taken off and were found near his body, indicating that maybe the attacker had intended to sexually assault him, but had been forced to kill him sooner if Stephen had tried to flee.
Right.
Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He tried to flee or was
interrupted.
Might get caught.
Yep. The other theory was that his murder, of course, was carried out by a copycat killer. Stephen's brother, Christopher, said later in an interview for the New York Daily News, quote, it affected everyone. It split the whole family up. The tragedy of Stephen's death is not only did we have to deal with him dying, we had to deal with the rest of us dying.
God.
I know. A week after Stephen's murder, a 30-year-old man named Daniel Olivo was named as the first suspect in the case after being arrested for raping a 5-year-old boy in a park in the Bronx. He lured the young boy to a secluded area by offering to play ball, and the boy managed to escape after the attack and alert his father.
God, what is wrong with people?
I know. While Olivo did match some characteristics of the eyewitness sketch, police were unable to link him to any of the other murders, and he was eventually dropped as a suspect. Soon after that, a man named El Gonzalez was apprehended after someone called him in for looking like the suspect in the composite sketch. Sounds like he was just applying for a job.
No.
Somebody was like, that's the guy. None of the witnesses could confirm that he was the man that they'd seen previously, so police moved to set him free. Unfortunately, a mob had formed at the station, having been alerted by the press of his existence. Quote, the horde was unmoved when an NYPD spokesperson grabbed a bullhorn. Quote, this is not the man, go home, officers announced in English and in Spanish. But law enforcement's entreaties were met only with jeers and projectiles from the crowd. The mob, quote, climbed over the police barriers and scaled roofs and police cars. The police decided to dress Gonzalez up as an officer and sneak him out through the crowd. An officer dressed in civilian clothing was also escorted out by police to act as bait.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, they just pretended a cop. Exactly. And it totally worked, despite the fact that the uniform did not fit Gonzalez. And we'll post pictures, but these people climbed the walls. I mean, they were like teaming over the edges, and who can fucking blame them?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
so scary.
So scary. It's also very reminiscent of what's happening right now. It's like, if you don't protect your people, if you don't take care of them, then they're going to come for you.
Right.
Police continued an exhaustive search for their killer over several months, including, and these are all direct quotes from the True Crime Database. This guy writes like a goddamn wizard, and so I just decided to directly quote him because it's just great. Mm-hmm. So the things that they did: obtaining the mailing list of a Chicken Hawk magazine and interviewing local subscribers. I don't know if they actually referred to it as a Chicken Hawk magazine, but I left it in. Casing the area methadone clinics, perchance the killer was a loose-lipped addict. Good use of the word perchance. Sorting through 9,000 police records of known child molesters. Knocking on thousands of apartment doors searching for witnesses and clues. Distributing more than 1,500 flyers featuring the suspect's composite to police departments throughout the country. Canvassing the local bike shops to see if anyone recognized the man who'd promised the one boy a free bicycle. Quote, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack, but needles have been found in haystacks before, said Sergeant Edmund Clan in the New York Times. So profiles for serial killers hadn't been officially adopted by the FBI in 1973, but police enlisted NYPD psychologist Dr. Harvey Schlossenberg to help them identify the kind of person who would commit these horrible crimes. He, quote, theorized the perpetrator was a self-hating homosexual who endeavored to emasculate his victims as an antidote to his same-sex yearnings by turning little boys into little girls, the doctor said. Mm-hmm. The slayer believed he could negate his own homosexuality.
Nope.
Dr. Schlossenberg also detected erotic undertones in the assailant's penetration-heavy modus operandi. Quote, symbolically, it's an orgasm. It's really quite sexual. I would agree with the latter half of that statement, but probably not so much the former. I mean, maybe the guy was a homosexual, who knows, but...
Right. That's beside the point.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah. Early psychoanalysis. I don't think they... Yeah.
Yeah.
Had a very different perspective on homosexuality in the 70s.
Right. I mean, it was a mental illness in their minds.
Yeah. After about 9 months of searching, all leads began to dry up, and the NYPD task force was quietly disbanded. After 9 months. 9 months.
Crazy.
That's crazy. Luckily, on May 25th, 1974, the police got a huge break. A man named Erno Soto, who, if you'll remember, had been questioned after Luis Ortiz was murdered, but he was too tall, so they crossed him off the list. He was arrested after attempting to kidnap a 9-year-old boy with dark skin. Quote, He was walking along, holding the kid up over his head, holding him up in the sky, and the kid was screaming, said NYPD homicide detective Ed Gomez.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's a poor attempt to kidnap a kid.
Right. Like, here he is.
Yeah, well, you'll learn. This Soto character is not...
Right.
He's not all there. So as detectives investigated Soto, they uncovered a ton of information that hadn't been covered the first time around. Soto's wife and father lived in Harlem and the Lower East Side, both areas where the boys' bodies had been found, and in fact his father lived right around the corner from where Stephen Cropper had been murdered. He had an 11-year criminal history, including burglary and narcotics, but no record of child molestation or violent crimes. He had been institutionalized at the time of Stephen Cropper's murder, but further investigation realized that he'd been out on a weekend pass, so could have committed the crime.
Oh, no.
Additional investigation revealed that Soto had also been caught sneaking out of the center several times.
Oh, Jesus.
So very well could have committed additional murders.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, periodically committed to various asylums since 1965, Soto wasn't covertly mentally ill, he was psychotic. A raving maniac, babbling incessantly about religion and careening with a shambolic gait as he crooned along to the voices in his head. Disheveled and with subpar hygiene, quote, slovenly was the tactful descriptor favored by the New York Times. Soto was described in hospital records as being, quote, so out of it he can't give useful information. According to the New York Times, he was initially committed because he, quote, became violent with grandiose religious delusions. So the guy was a total fucking nutter.
Right.
Despite his clear mental illness, police were able to question Soto about the murders, and he actually admitted to killing Stephen Cropper, but would not take credit for any of the others.
Oh, okay.
He was also, and remember, Stephen was the one who was carved with the X, so the one that was
further away.
And a different style of murder. He was also unable to provide any details about poor Stephen's attack, but a confession was enough evidence for the police to move on from the case, although I did read that the case still remains, all the cases remain officially unsolved.
Oh, no.
So, Soto was found criminally insane, and, quote, the two psychiatrists who testified at Mr. Soto's trial said that though he was, quote, pleasant, cooperative, responsive, and coherent, he was a dangerous schizophrenic who attacked for, quote, religious and ritualistic purposes. He was committed to a maximum security mental health facility, and so the only information regarding motive or evidence is what people have pulled together over the years. The main theory for why he could have committed the murders is that Soto was separated from his wife for several years and eventually suggested that they try to reconcile. When they got back together, he learned that she'd had a child with a black man. Soto and his wife were Puerto Rican. And while he pretended to be okay with his new stepchild, as the kid's 8th birthday rolled around, Soto's behavior became more and more unpredictable to the point that he was committed to the institution. So, let's talk about the things that are in favor of Soto having committed the murders. The phone tipster who initially mentioned Soto believed he looked like the sketch composite, so he was tipped. The police were tipped off twice about him.
Right.
He was 33 years old when he was arrested, and all of the witnesses estimated that the age range was between 30 and 45. He had bad skin, which was reported by all of the witnesses. He also had very poor hygiene and probably had terrible breath, which was noted by the boy who'd survived the attack. Some of the things that are working against the theory that he committed the murders. He was 6 foot 1 inches tall, so considerably taller than the 5'7" to 5'10" that was reported by witnesses. He was also left-handed, and the boy who survived was pretty adamant that his attacker was probably right-handed. Soto had a Puerto Rican accent, and the woman, the mother, who had met with the man said his accent was Dominican. He also did not have any black marks on his chin or a mole on his left cheek, and he did not limp, although people said he kind of did shuffle because he was pretty addicted to narcotics.
Right.
So the witnesses who had seen Stephen Cropper just before his murder did identify Soto as the man that they had seen, but the boy who had survived his attack was adamant that Soto was not his attacker and stuck by his account that Soto was much taller than the man who'd ultimately ruined his life.
Wow.
Yeah. So, again, Soto confessed to killing Stephen Cropper. The witnesses who saw Stephen right before he died said, yes, that's the man we saw him with. And then the boy who survived the attacks that fall into the other range, he said, no, that's not the guy who did this at all.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So in 1993, Soto did ask to be released on, quote, compassionate grounds due to a terminal illness, which confined him to a wheelchair and left him dependent on daily dialysis. The public erupted when they heard about his potential release, and Stephen Cropper's brother said, quote, my parents were never notified. We didn't know anything until we read the daily news series on Friday. I know my mother was shocked, and my father, I thought he was going to have a heart attack. I thought he was going to die right in my arms because he was crying and was very upset. Soto was far from a model inmate and had been caught assaulting a staff member, sneaking marijuana, attempting to slit a doctor's throat, and threatening to, quote, jab the eyes out of another patient. His release was denied, but as he is a mental patient and not a prison inmate, he is eligible to reapply again every 2 years.
Wow. Is he still alive?
He is, yes. As far as anyone can tell, he's still alive. The one thing that everyone agrees on in this case, the one thing that's conclusive, is that the killings of these boys did stop after Soto was taken into custody. And that is the all-around horrible, tragic, fucked up case of Charlie Chopoff.
I want to know who did it for sure.
I want to know who did it for sure. We need to know who did it for sure. I mean, if that's not a case to reopen, I don't know what the fuck would
it's
be.
not too late.
Well, it's not closed. If it's not a case to pick it back up and blow off the files, open them up.
Let's
right?
look at the clothes. There's got to be DNA evidence.
Yes.
There's got to be.
Yes.
Let's find the swabs. Let's get the shirts. Let's do this.
Yeah. Yes. Let's get this case reopened because and most people, all of the media really pushed that Erno Soto was the guy, of course, because he confessed to the one murder. They also, a lot of people were like, his confession could have been coerced. He was severely mentally ill, on drugs, etc., etc. So even that seems a little shaky.
Well, and he said he didn't know he couldn't remember any of the details of the murder he confessed to.
Yeah.
And that seems very
suspicious, right?
Very suspicious.
Yes. So it's one of those, it's just like every other case ever with a false confession where they got the confession and they were like, done, got our guy. And then the media really pushed to have this be the end of it. Yeah. Right. Yep. And that was it. I don't think he killed those kids.
No, it sure doesn't seem like it.
Nope.
There's got to be evidence.
Yep.
And I still can't believe that you could get away with murdering children on rooftops and in the daytime, like between 3:30 and 5:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, or like 8:45 on in the spring and summer. It's still pretty light out.
Yeah,
around that time, in a densely packed city where everybody's out on the street.
Right.
I know. There's got to be more information. I also just wonder. They say they did this exhaustive search, but I question that too. Because if they had, it's like, what's his head story? Marty Tankliff. It's like all these people, they're like, oh yeah, we talked to everybody. And then the private investigator goes back and they're all like, oh yeah, I told him that he's best friends with the cop and, all this stuff.
Right.
All this information, all this evidence that had not been compiled. I just believe that
it'd be more.
Yes. That they didn't work very hard on it. I think they had a lot on their plates. Harlem in the 70s was pretty intense. New York City in the 70s, the whole goddamn island was a crazy place to be, know. So I think that little baby black boys were the least of their priorities, and
that's not okay.
Fucking awful. I know.
Yeah, it's awful.
It's like one of the worst serial killer stories I've ever heard in my life, and I'd never heard it before.
Right. No, that's awful.
You know what I mean?
Let's reopen it. Let's
start a petition. Seriously. Which DA is up next? Who's up for re-election? I mean, we're going to defund the whole fucking system. So in the meantime, let's figure out which DA is up for re-election and push this one onto their plate.
Seriously.
Right?
Wow. Well, I mean, thank you.
I know. I really did soul search. It was like, I wonder if the crimes are so fucking heinous that
Right.
it's a hard one to talk about. It's a hard one
Sure.
to, it just feels really awful and sort of disrespectful, but I think it's more awful and disrespectful to let this killer be inconclusive.
Right. Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
So there you go. I'm sorry, you guys.
Yeah.
The next one I'll do is going to be about a bunny who attempts to murder a goose, but by loving it too hard. Interspecial love gone wrong. Okay?
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
I don't think people are coming here for the feel goods.
I kind of feel like people who like true crime and horror are also the same people who watch interspecial videos on the dodo like I do. Mm-hmm. I think that those things kind of live in the same part of the brain for some reason. You know what I mean?
You know what Ryan and I have been doing?
What?
At bedtime?
What?
We call them our night stories. He found this amazing pimple video lady. She's like an esthetician, right? But it's not, you know how some of them are really over the top and gross?
Yeah.
This one is amazing. She's just going around getting all the pimples, and it's so soothing. So we watch 10, 15 minutes a night before bed.
Dude, trust me. I could watch a pimple video for the rest of my life.
I will have him. So there's one in particular that's just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that there's the same? So animal videos, true crime, and are you guys pimple people or not pimple people?
Right.
Tell
us.
Yep.
I guess it's such a thing that this is something that people do before bed, that there's one person who does her pimple popping videos and puts bedtime music on top of them.
Oh my God. Brilliant.
I haven't watched that one yet.
Genius. But it's so satisfying.
Yeah, it really is very soothing.
So strange. We're all like, why do I like that? I just
primates.
Love it.
Yeah, we're primates.
Yep.
We want to pick at each other's nits.
I know. If I was married to somebody who wasn't a pimple person, I don't know what I would do.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
I've dated a few non-pimple people, and it was just torturous.
Torture. I'm also when I see those pimple videos, I'm like, who let that person walk around like that?
I know. That's what,
how you do not have one person in your life that is just attacking you and holding you down and forcing you to let them pop your zits.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. Yep. Well, we could talk about this for the rest of the night, or we could talk about two major breakthroughs that occurred just this afternoon in the world of They Will Kill. First thing, my dear friend Kate, who's a chef, who's amazing, who's a listener from the beginning, has volunteered to be the elote chef for the They Will Kill barbecue elote road trip Coven Party 2021, and she's going to make Ecolate elote for you. And guys, trust me when I say you want to come to this party if Kate has anything to do with it. So that's the first set of news.
Yep.
The second set of news is that we got a message, well, I guess it was a comment on Instagram from somebody who said that she thought that I called Sadie a maniac. Maniac. E-C-K. Not maniac. Maniac. And so your name has been born. Woo! I mean, it's the kind of thing that you have to explain it every time you say it, but you guys are officially the maniacs. What was her name? I'm going to pull that up really quick so we can give her credit because we knew it would come. It's so great. I mean,
it's so funny.
Duh. It's just sitting in front of our faces all this time. It's also funny because Sadie's oldest, I think he probably got it from me, but I always say, quit being such a maniac. And so it's a common phrase between the two of us. April 777, thank you for accidentally hearing me say something that I did not say and then sharing it.
And then oh, maniac.
Maniacs, you bunch of maniacs.
I saw our mother earlier today. She had the boys and brought them home, and I was like, Mom, we have names for our listeners, and I was like, it's Maniac X, like Maniacs. And then I got distracted and left the room to probably put out a fire or something, and came back. She was like, I just figured it out. That's funny.
I know. Like I said, it's a
Maniac.
joke that you have to describe it. You get it, like maniac, like maniacs. You like we're maniac. You're anyway. I'm willing to commit. I think it's so cute too and funny, and I'm willing to commit to describing what I'm saying every time I say it. Also, it looks crazy when you write it, so it's
right. It's gonna
all
around.
It'll have to be like maniacs, MANIECKS is in parentheses, like maniac, but with ek.
Get it, guys?
Oh my God. We're just the queens of snappy marketing. The other good news from the day is that earlier I was talking to my business partner. We talk every day. He lives in Portland. My business is still in Portland. Hi, Donna. She's my other business partner. She listens. James, there's two of them. James does not listen. Donna does. Hi, Donna. James and I were talking, and I stand up, and I'm like, holy shit, I have COVID. My leg, my one right thigh was super numb, super tingly. And so I was doing that thing where I was talking to James still, and it was like the conversation was winding down, so I didn't really have to pay attention to the details. It was more like pleasantries. I'm like, yep, Google, COVID symptoms. And I was like, fuck, okay, this is it. Okay, it's okay, I can do this. And then I was like, oh, wait. Put on some underwear I hadn't worn in a really long time, and they were like a little bit too tight, and I realized they were cutting off my carotid artery. And so, you guys, I cured my COVID by changing my underwear. Yeah, I pulled through. You'll all be happy to know. God damn this fucking disease. If I had a nickel for every time I cured it of myself in the last 4 months.
Yep. Me too. I've never had allergies like this. I'm certain that I am causing the allergic reaction by thinking so hard about it.
I could not agree more. I think that it's a psychosomatic
response.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like inflammation caused by, my allergies are horrifying this year. Everything is. And it's like either they are always like that, I just don't care because there's not a, debilitating virus looming over us at all times, or they are just really bad this year. But I think they are really bad this year.
Right.
And also, I've been watching, is it called Say I Do or Surprising?
Oh, yeah. Say I Do.
Oh, my holy shit, you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. If you're not watching Say I Do on Netflix and you have a heart and a soul, stop what you're doing. I'm sorry, ridiculousness. I think I have a new favorite television show. It's so good. It's the same team that does Queer Eye. And oh my God, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what they do, like what their formula is, but it's men surprising their spouses, male or female spouses, with surprise weddings. And I love wedding stuff already, but then you get these like beautiful gay men helping them with the surprise, and talk about a fucking sob fest. So I look like garbage right now. I look like total shit because I've been crying for like 3 to 4 hours every night watching this show.
That's really sweet.
Oh really my God. Show. And you start out and you're like, oh, it's not as good as Queer Eye. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
The three don't have quite as much chemistry, but they have plenty of chemistry, and they're so beautiful, and they're geniuses, and it's so good.
It's really good. Yeah. I just finished the 3rd episode.
Which one is that?
The King and Queen.
Oh God. Yeah,
it was so good.
Ugh. It's beautiful people.
I know.
So.
But I also, because of, all these shows are filmed pre-COVID.
I know.
The 3rd episode has a taco wall.
I know.
Where they put all the tacos on the wall, which sounds weird, but it would totally worked. The whole time I was just like, oh my God, that's never going to happen again in the history of the world.
I know.
There will never be another taco wall.
I know. Like watching people hug and stuff and sort of wincing every time they do. Yeah. It'll come back. I know. I also think about how long it's going to be before they could shoot another season. But you know what?
Right.
We're resilient. We'll figure it out in the meantime. And I have no doubt this shit's going to pass eventually. But in the meantime, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed by saving the world or fighting a virus, watch Say I Do. It's this sweet, sweet salve that your soul needs right now.
That's right. Real quick, we're going to play a promo from our friend Emily with Morbidology.
You all know Morbidology. You love her, right? She's getting pretty big. Got that cool accent. Covers those cases. True crime author. She's a badass.
Yeah, she really is. Amazing website. I was like, who's the web designer?
Yeah,
It's not me, because our website does not look that nice.
She seems like a very generous person. Maybe she'll give us a little help out. Question mark?
So enjoy it.
Morbidology is a weekly true crime podcast hosted by me, Emily G. Thompson, author of Unsolved Child Murders, Cults Uncovered, and co-author of Unsolved Murders, True Crime Cases Uncovered.
911 emergency. My son shot my husband. I need an ambulance. He's bleeding.
Using investigative research combined with primary audio, including 911 calls, interviews, and trial testimony, Morbidology takes a look at some of the world's most heinous murders.
Do you know why you're here?
For a home invasion gone terribly wrong.
Listen to Morbidology now on Apple, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, or wherever else you get podcasts.
All right, you guys. So you know where to find us at Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at They Will Kill. Go to our website, theywillkill.com. And gmail us at theywillkillpodcast@gmail.com.
Please rate, review, subscribe. And thank you, AJ, for our beautiful music.
Thank you very much. And remember,
don't go out there being maniacs.
there you go. That's it. Put that right on the marketing list of keepers. Don't go out there being maniacs.
Or do. It's really kind of up to you.
Look, it's a new world. There's no rules. Be a maniac if you want to.
We love you so much.
We love you so much. And by me, I mean, let me clarify, like a cool maniac or like a love maniac, not like a murder one.
Right, yeah,
Right.
we don't like those.
No,
Nothing.
not like sociopath, person, maniac. But
Right,
those aren't
definitely.
maniacs, those are maniacs. That's a
Right,
clear...
it's a huge, major difference.
Yeah, see, hear it, you guys? Maniac. You hear it? Right? You get it? Right?
Yeah.
We love you guys!
We love you. Goodbye.
Goodbye!